Videos like this one show the group in similar outfits with their faces covered. A lot of the media and left calling these right-wing extremists. Apparently, Patriot Front members believe that their ancestors conquered America. According to the Daily Beast, the group's leader gave a speech near the Capitol reflecting pool where he said, quote, "Our demonstrations are an exhibition of our unified capability to organize and show strength." Never heard of these guys before. Is anyone else? Let's welcome in host of the Ari Hoffman Show on 570 KVI in Seattle, Ari Hoffman. Also with us, Republican strategist Bobby. He is the host of the 13-minute News Hour. Ari, Bobby, great to have you both with us. Have any of you ever heard of this group, the Patriot Front, before, Ari? Anything about this group before?
I have no idea who these guys are. In fact, I had to Google them when you said you were going to be talking about this on the show. And when I looked them up, the only evidence I could find of their existence was according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, something I find very sketchy about this, which seems to be downplayed in the media, is that these guys showed up via U-Haul and left via U-Haul. So if you want to know who these guys really are, look up the license plates and look up the rental agreement. It's as easy as that. But don't these guys normally show up on buses or cars? To throw a bunch of guys in the back of a U-Haul? This sounds staged to me. This has all the earmarks of a Lincoln Project attempt.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen this before,
right.
Bobby. That's the whole thing. You know, we've got the Lincoln Project, you know, what do you call that? Performance art, whatever that was.
Right.
I mean, you've got the accusations made by the defendants in the Michigan kidnapping case of Gretchen Whitmer that they feel like they were set up. You know, I tweeted earlier, we've got video evidence of a guy planting bombs at the Republican National Committee, the Democratic National Committee. The FBI hasn't been able to track that person down, despite the fact they have him on camera doing it. And, you know, I'm not saying that the feds were behind this march this weekend, but a lot of people are raising that issue because we've had these issues with the feds recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Ari says, the whole thing looks sketchy. I mean, the only thing we're missing are the tiki torches. I mean, the whole thing seems just bogus. It seems suspicious. The whole thing about masking their faces, that bugs me, you know, whether it's this group or Antifa. It's like you believe so strongly in what you stand for that you're going to hide and shame. You know, people who believe in what they're doing, they come on shows like this, they talk about it. They talk about their views. But yeah, the FBI in general really has a black mark against them. So you can't help when people out there are suspicious. When we saw what, you know, Peter Strzok did in the whole FBI organization against former President Trump, and then on and on and on, these entrapment cases can be very serious and very real. We've seen cases go toward the defendants and against the FBI. So there's no question out there that people are skeptical.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I also want to ask you guys a question. Well, we'll leave that there for a second. You know, you make such a good point, too. No patriot who really wants to redress, you know, face his government down and talk to them would show up wearing a mask. That's not how it's done. You know, we have this, you know, ability to you know, petition our government for our grievances in public. You show your face. You show up at the meetings like the parents did at all these school board meetings. You say what the problem is, you put your name on the record, and you get it out there. This is not, you know, again, everyone's curious about what's going on here. I don't know if we'll see any more marches from these guys, but we'll move on from that. Guys, did you also see the Daily Show host Trevor Noah? He's finally starting to catch on to what we've been on to for a while. He's now questioning the Moderna CEO's vaccine push. Take a listen here, guys.
On the one hand, almost all the Omicron cases have been mild so far. But on the other hand, the guy who stands to gain millions of dollars from new vaccines says we need new vaccines. If we don't make a new vaccine, this disease could be with us forever. Sorry, I was thinking of something else. Now, look, I'm not saying that the CEO of Moderna is lying. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I don't think he's the most objective source on this topic.
And Trevor Noah is just saying what we've been just saying, Ari, for like a year, that, you know, you shouldn't listen to the people that make the vaccines, that have seen their stock prices go through the roof, talking about vaccines. I mean, it's really the doctors that should be making those calls, right? With no financial aspect attached to it.
1,000%. I was actually shocked to see a clip from Trevor Noah trending. I think in all the years he's hosted The Daily Show, I don't think I've ever seen that before. And I was even more shocked that I decided to share the thing because I don't find the guy especially funny. I was surprised that my views for once actually align with the guy. It's like, I don't know what's happening over there on the left. You got Deborah Messing talking about how SUVs can't run into people by themselves. You got Sarah Silverman saying that the garbage they're making up about Ron DeSantis creating his own paramilitary unit is complete garbage. I don't know if the left is finally realizing that if they don't come around and start telling the truth, maybe their ratings are going to continue taking these massive, massive hits. I mean, just look at CNN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk about Sarah Silverman coming up later. She and Seth Rogen have the lowest rated show ever in the history of IMDb, and that goes to your point. I mean, there is a limit here, Bobby, that to the amount the American public is going to accept. I mean, it didn't seem like it before. This time last year, I was a little, concerned, but people know where the edge is, and at a certain time, you have to just, reflect on common sense, and maybe that's what's happening here. Finally.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, if you get pushed closer and closer to that cliff, you're eventually going to look over and see that it's a pretty big fall. And that's what people are doing. And to your point earlier, you have people standing up now, those people in Loudoun County, not masking, standing, putting their views out there for people to hear. And what's just laughable are the minions, the left-wing minions that follow the Deborah Messings and Silvermans and Trevor Noahs. They're freaking out because it's like, what is this guy? He sounds objective, and we can't have that. We have party line. We have our talking points. We have our narrative, and if you deviate from that, you are out. He actually presented kind of both sides and had people think about it. I mean, that's just kind of unheard of right now. But everything he said was actually true. You interview the physicians in South Africa. Everything's mild so far. There's no reason to freak out, except if you want to line your pockets at Moderna and Pfizer.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be, and you bring up a good point, Bobby, it used to be where culture would kind of reflect what was happening in our everyday lives, and it's kind of gotten reversed now. And, Hollywood, a lot of these big traditional establishment media sources, they wanted to be the ones controlling the narrative instead of, actually just listening to what's happening, what the American people actually care about. And, that's what we're seeing now with Trevor Noah. You can't just accept what a politician tells you, even if you're a member of that party, Ari. You have to be critical. You have to think critically about all this stuff. And hopefully, maybe that's a lesson that Trevor Noah is learning here. You can't just be critical when you don't like the guy who's in office.
We can only hope. I mean, especially when you look at what's happening in New York today with de Blasio's mandates that just came down. I mean, they're going to affect the minority communities more than anybody else. You're talking about huge percentages of the Hispanic community, the Black community that are not vaccinated right now. And you're going to tell them, hey, you can't come to your job anymore. You can't go to restaurants anymore. You're going to tell all these parents who haven't gotten their kids between 5 and 11 the jab yet. You're going to say you can't go to McDonald's, you can't go to the movies, you can't go to an arcade. The event industry is struggling. The restaurant industry is struggling. The entertainment industry is struggling. And now you're going to say to all these people you can't go just when these places are getting back on their feet. Meanwhile, all of Joe Biden's mandates are being shot down across the country. How do they even go forward with things like this? And how can you not call it out when you can see clearly what's happening?
Yeah, the motivations, what's really behind this? That's a question we talked to Peter King about. Why would you do this? Is it because Bill de Blasio needs to make some news before he steps aside? He's got higher office in mind. I don't know. We'll see. Guys, great to see you both. We'll have you back in the next hour for more of a conversation. Meanwhile, CNN's Reliable Sources host, Brian Stelter, says the media has been harder on President Biden than they actually were on President Trump. He cited an article by Washington Post columnist Dana Milbank. Milbank claims to have analyzed the tone of hundreds of thousands of news stories about President Biden. He says, his analytics say it's just not fair. It's just not fair for President Biden. All right, so Dan, I'll go to you first on this one. Do you think Brian Stelter, he was almost kind of realizing what was happening there in that initial clip, that there are machines that can do his job for him, do a crappy job of analyzing the news?
Yeah, this is a scary day to be Brian Stelter, and here he thought he was going to get Chris Cuomo's spot. It's amazing to me that we're all taking seriously Dana Milbank, the same guy who was caught back in 2016 emailing the Democratic National Committee to try to get opposition research for a column he was writing about none other than Donald Trump. So that sort of media atmosphere where the DNC and journalists who cover the DNC are so intimately involved with each other, this is the same guy who 5 years later has the cojones to say the press is harder on Biden than on Donald Trump. For goodness sakes, they made up an entire Russia conspiracy at this point in Trump's presidency to try to take him down. This is one of the most ridiculously hilarious things I've heard since the last ridiculously hilarious thing on Brian Stelter's show, which was probably last weekend.
Back to the whole Dana Milbank thing, you know, the only way we know that Ron Klain is still alive is he sends out these ridiculous tweets. And this is one of them. Ron Klain, the chief of staff, who is MIA most of the time, he comes out of his cave to say, yes, in fact, this article with all this artificial intelligence is correct. It's like alternative facts, artificial intelligence here.
Yeah.
Yes, Joe Biden is not getting a fair shake in the press. Maybe he's just doing a bad job. Maybe that's it.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what the key word of everything that you have put together leading up to this story is tone. They are analyzing, supposedly, this artificial intelligence, this Stelter machine, is analyzing the tone of stories. It's just ridiculous. I mean, if there was any kind of bad tone, it was what was directed at former President Trump. 90% stories were negative on network after network after network. And now they say that the tone of the stories is against Biden. It's outrageous. There's so much substance that you can go over with Afghanistan and taxes and energy policy and the border and foreign relations. On and on and on. It's unending. And yet they're trying to, they want more access to Biden, but they know deep down that, you know, he's their guy and they're going to do anything to support him. And with the polling going, you know, in the 38s and even lower in some other polls, they have to do something to try and turn things around. But this is probably the most outrageous I've seen.
You know, with this Stelter machine, I love that term, too. It's kind of like the Iron Byron golf machines, except for deep thinking analytics on the news. But, you know, the difference here, Ari, is you don't have the collusion with the media and the left-wing politicians that you did with President Trump. I mean, literally, the 1-6 Commission is using the Bob Woodward book for reference for the new commission here, citing things that never actually even happened. So, I mean, and just like during the, the previous impeachment trials, they play clips from the news. These are used by Democratic politicians. There's nothing like that going on right now. I mean, this is so asinine and it's just ridiculous. But of course, I mean, maybe that's the point, just to go out, just all the chips in the middle of the table, just be ridiculous as possible.
Last week, the New York Times ran an article on how nice it was to see Dr. Jill Biden's Christmas tree display at the White House. It was a total puff piece. And the whole piece, all it did was compare how nice it was to return to normal and how terrible the decorations were under the former First Lady Melania Trump. I mean, talk about towing the Democrat line, just trying to make things seem better when it's such a colossal disaster. You're talking about all the money being spent on White House Christmas decorations when a lot of Americans couldn't spend the money on turkey this year. Skynet or whoever is behind whatever they're running, the algorithm must be going nuts because even CNN, MSNBC, and other outlets are finally calling out things in the Biden administration because you can't ignore them. Inflation is getting worse. Job reports are beyond bad. And they can't ignore that stuff anymore. So if this thing is actually doing its job, it's probably saying, wait a minute, those are supposed to be the friendly things talking about us. How come they're being negative?
Yeah, and maybe if they would do a little press, actual real press, instead of these, kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we're going to take some questions, whatever. I think they're starting to realize they don't have a choice anymore. They got to do that. Anyway, Jen Psaki's not giving the answers that they want. So anyway, that White House press briefing, guys, is going on right now. We're monitoring that. Last time we checked, Jen Psaki was talking about drug prices or something, not really germane to the topic of conversation today, but we are monitoring that for the folks at home, just so you know. I also wanted to talk to you guys, too. We mentioned this last hour, the point at which the American public really starts to say they've had enough. Even HBO Max subscribers may be saying enough here, because Ari talked about this last time. Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen, two known leftists, They love to talk smack about President Trump and Republicans. They have a new show over on HBO Max. It's some kind of Christmas theme show, although I'm sure it's probably isn't nice to Christmas. But this right now is the lowest rated show in the history of the Internet Movie Database website. Dan, I think the American public have had enough of these two and all this kind of leftist, Hollywood-driven stuff.
Well, this is a relatively frequent phenomenon. You'll see movies and TV shows like Yellowstone that are incredibly beloved by middle America audiences and reviled by critics. And then there are things that might be puffed up by critics on the coasts that are just reviled by mainstream audiences. And Seth Rogen, I don't think he's done anything funny since, what, Knocked Up? That was 2007. Sarah Silverman, she's about 15 years past her prime. And the two of them making fun of Christmas and poking fun at American traditions and calling them stupid. It's no real surprise that people wouldn't want to watch that. But I will say, my Christmas present this year is watching those IMDb ratings plummet for these two. It's bringing a special joy to my heart, John.
You know, we always got to find joy where we can, and that's the meaning of Christmas, right? Find the good things and make them, you know, anyway. But Bobby and Ari, we'll go to you guys each on this one. Is this a little poetic justice for Seth and Sarah?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and it's a bubble. You know, these guys aren't making these films by themselves. You know, you've got production crew and cameras and reviewers and producers, directors. They all bought into this. They all got together and thought that this was a good idea. But when you have Elf and you have Christmas Story and you've got Die Hard and on and on and on, there's plenty of great entertainment out there over the Christmas season. I'll pass on this one. But I do love to see the ratings hit rock bottom. Maybe you can go to 0.5 or something even lower.
That's right. You're a diehard truther. I think we agree on this panel. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's not up for debate. Ari, go ahead.
I agree 1,000%. I don't think I've ever agreed more with anything on this panel. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. But also, I mean, I'm on HBO Max on a regular basis, and I got to blame them a little bit for this. I'm on there on a fairly regular basis catching up on certain shows. I didn't even know this thing was happening. So I think HBO Max knew they had 11 on their hands and didn't advertise.
Yeah, they know it's bad.
And I think that contributed to it.
Yeah, well, maybe we... Don't waste your time seeing it. Bottom line, you'd be much better off and much happier if you just go ahead and watch Die Hard, right? That's one of those Christmas movies. You put the kids to bed, and Die Hard, it's for that adult eggnog, you know? Right, guys? All right, Dan, Ari, and Bobby, great to see you all. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
All right, friends, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button above. Once you do, tell your friends, share it, spread the word about the 13-minute news hour so we can keep growing. And for more great content, check out these videos right here, and I'll see you next time.